and hopefully we can just forget that it's there.
Yeah,
I'll
what
just
do you
ignore
mean
it.
ask me about it? Do you mean the camera?
No, we'll talk to each other.
Oh, I see.
And I'll just ask you about your experiences in the war.
Yes.
And because I think it would be nice to one day to be able to play it, and to hear if you didn't mind. So, I mean, it's essentially just going through what I read in the book.
That's right.
How old were you, Doris, when the war broke out?
17.
You were 17?
17, yes.
Gosh, so you were still at school at the time?
No, I'd left school. I left school just before I was 16, actually.
And were you working then when...
Yes, I was. I'd left one job because it was no good, and I went to work at the British Oxygen Company.
Oh, yes.
In Greenwich. I lived in Greenwich.
Yeah.
And it was near enough to walk to work.
And you said that when the war broke out, before the war broke out, you didn't have radio, but you heard the news vendors.
That's right. Basically, we didn't have very much money, and you didn't waste money on something that wasn't necessary. And very few people had radios in those days, so you couldn't get your news on the radio.
So there was no radio, it was just the newspapers then and the sellers.
The rich people had radios, but not the poor people didn't. And I came into the class of the poor people. Mum was a widow, so we didn't waste money on anything that wasn't necessary.
And you had you said you were in church on the day that the war actually broke out. So which church was that? East
Greenwich Baptist Church. That's where I came to know the Lord Jesus as my Saviour. And I was baptised there.
How old were you when you baptised?
1938, I think it was. And I was born 22. So it'd be 16, wouldn't I?
And were you going there because that's where your mum took you to church?
No, in actual fact I was going to a Methodist Sunday school. And I had two friends from school, and our children that don't go to church can jeer and be a bit unkind. And these two girls, very lovely girls, but she goes to church, And I said to Mum, can I leave Sunday school? I love Sunday school. And I used to take myself off to church of an evening on my own. But I just couldn't put up with the jeering. She said, you can leave at Christmas, but not before. And when Mum spoke, you obeyed Mum. And I was out with these two girls one night. We met two boys. And the conversation was, there was three girls, two boys. One of them said, oh, I wonder if anybody would be interested in this. And he went down his top pocket. He brought out a load of texts. I don't know whether they do it now, but they used to give the children the texts.
Right,
if they'd answer questions. So without me even answering, these two girls went, she does. And I wanted to curl up then. That was the last time I ever wanted to curl up about church. I love to let everybody know I'm a Christian. But he said to me, oh, if you're going to leave, because I don't think I told you. I said, oh, I'm leaving at Christmas. Oh, he said, if you're leaving, come to my church. So I said, what's that? He said, East Greenwich Baptist Church. And I felt almost then God was speaking to me, not to listen to these girls, to listen to that young man. And we kept together as very good friends for 5 years, actually. And I was baptised there. I accepted the Lord first, obviously, and then I was baptised there. And that minister that led me to the Lord, he eventually went to Peckham, between Peckham and Dulwich. But he came back to Blackheath and Cheltenham Baptist Church where we got married, and he married us there.
Oh wow.
Yes. And then eventually he went down to Devon, but we kept in touch right until he was called home.
Wow.
Lovely man.
And was it during a Sunday service that you actually became a Christian? Was it after a service?
I just wanted to be there. I was there for everything. We used to have prayer meeting, Bible study in the week, and I used to go morning and evening Because I mean, I could get out for an evening. I was only young in those days.
And do you remember the moment when you became a Christian, or was it that over a period of time you gradually understood?
No, I've been listening to his sermon, because I can't say in the Methodist Church, truthfully, that I'd ever heard the need of salvation.
Mm.
And I heard it at East Greenwich Baptist Church. And I remember him giving an appeal one night, and I thought, oh, I'd love to, because I know you won't believe it now, none of St Mildred's believe it, but I was a very, very shy person. I was very, very shy, and he gave an appeal, and I thought, oh, I want to get out of my seat, and I think it was glued to me, my bottom was glued to the seat. I could not get up, I was too shy. I was upstairs, because a lot of Baptist churches have galleries, is it?
Yes,
yeah.
I know what you mean.
And I was upstairs, I've got to get up, I've got to go downstairs and go right through the church. I can't do that, Lord, I can't do that. So I did still tell the minister that night. I went to him, and he always used to go in his little, I forget what they called it, a little room that was for the pastor. And
yeah.
I said I was too shy to get up, but I do want to accept the Lord as my saviour. And I was baptised on the 27th of March 1938, I think it was.
Gosh.
And that was my wedding day as well, 27th of March, but 43.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
And we've baptised in a like a tank that we've got at St Mildred's,
Yes.
like fully immersed.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And somewhere in the house, I think I showed it to you, where they smashed it up because they pulled the church
Yes,
down
you did show
eventually.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mm.
yeah, you did show me the picture.
Mm.
So then it was only a little after a year later, and you were in the Baptist church at East Greenwich Baptist Church,
Yes.
and the pastor announced that war had broken out.
Yes, the pastor said, Chamberlain said that he would hear by 11 o'clock, and there's been no confirmation of it. So I have to tell you, we are at war with Germany. And an air raid warning went immediately. I was petrified. You didn't know what air raids were, what they were going to be. And I remember my new umbrella, brand new umbrella I'd saved up for, because we didn't have much money in those days. And I pulled it out and broke it in half, and I ran home to get in the shelter. There wasn't any need, we didn't have an air raid, but they thought there was some coming. But it made up for it afterwards.
So how long was it? Because you said it was the phony war to start with. There was air raids went off, but no planes came quite regularly.
Yes. I can't truthfully remember, but it was quite a long while, and then it started, and it never stopped. We used to know by the moon and by the light whether the Germans would be over. We'd say we're going for a bad night tonight. I can't remember why now, that's gone from me. But we could tell, I don't think we liked full moons, because it showed them the way.
Oh, I see.
And they were very, very fond of going up and bombing the Thames, both sides of the Thames, the Greenwich side and the other side. And with incendiary bombs, a lot of incendiary bombs, which lit up the way for the enemy planes that came over at night. They knew where to drop their bombs.
Gosh.
So we caught it pretty badly at Greenwich, because we were right near the end the River Thames, you see.
And so you were living in Greenwich, obviously.
Yes.
So that's right by the Thames.
Yes.
And what was it when the bombs were dropping? You described in one of the documents I read that it was just the noise was terrifying, and the ack guns were firing.
Yes.
There was just the sound of destruction everywhere. Is that what it was like?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the planes were overhead, and you knew the Jerry planes. They had a special sound, not like our planes, and they'd be dropping their bombs, And the ACAC, our boys, they go along the streets. They could come along Girder Road firing up at wherever they were needed. And they made quite a noise to go with it, so it was all noise really. If you had a quiet night, that was wonderful. But there weren't many quiet nights.
And essentially, in those days, you couldn't stay in your own bed.
Oh no. No, at first we had an Anderson shelter in the garden. They were not very nice things. You went down into them, they were metal. And I think there was a couple of seats, but they were damp and cold and it was winter. They weren't nice. And my mum wouldn't go down into them. But in the end it got so bad that she decided she'd go in a public shelter. So we went into St George's Church, I don't know whether you know it, Blackheath Standard.
Right, okay, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We went into a St George's Church out near Blackheath Standard, and everybody just brought blankets and pillows, and you all slept together. This room could hold quite a few bodies, you know, and it wasn't an ideal place at all, but it was. You were better with company. If you went in your little Anderson shelter, there's just me and Mum. Nothing to take it off, but we'd have a sing-song. The curate, is it the curate in the Anglican Church? I'm going going back to Baptist days.
No, curate is right for
yeah.
Anglican,
They would come in and play, or one of them would, and play hymns, and we'd have some hymns singing, which was nice, and different things went on. And there was a lot of people to take it off a little bit, but of course sometimes it was just so bad you couldn't hear it or speak with the bombing and the guns.
So in St George's Church, it was what made it safe compared to a house? Why was it a safe place to be?
Well, a lot of people said go in a church to be safe. That's the last place because the Germans would drop bombs on it. But I felt perfectly safe in that church, and a lot of people went in there. It was packed. I think people preferred to be with company rather than in a little place on their own. I mean, when I wrote that letter and I said about this chappie Alec that I was friendly with, his mother and father were in a shelter on their own, and you've got nothing else to concentrate upon except what's going on overhead and jumping, because you did jump with the bombs falling and that.
Yeah.
But when you're in a big place with a lot of people, there's things going on all the time. You know, you get some perhaps people to make you laugh, or some perhaps want pacifying, they're frightened.
And where did you sleep then? Did you sleep next to your mum and next to other people? Or?
You slept anywhere where there was a space. I mean, very, very often, I don't think I put it in there, but very often you might find yourself, I mean, I was only, 17, 18, something like that. I might have a man one side and a man the other. You didn't have to worry at all. They weren't like the carry-on these days.
No, and also... No. And what were you sleeping in? Like a sleeping bag and a,
No,
mat,
just
or?
on the floor with a blanket over you and a little cushion for your head.
And in those days in St George's Church, did a bomb ever go off near the church, or
did what?
Did bombs go off near the church?
All over. We were badly bombed.
Yeah.
I think I told you about the house that I wanted to move out of.
That's right. You felt that house there was something you didn't like.
If we'd have stayed there, the whole house would have come on top of us because there was a cellar, and we used to go in the cellar. And I just felt, we've got to get out. I'm telling you, I felt, but I don't think I did feel. I think it was God telling me, we've got to get out. He knew what was going to happen. And I just kept on to Mum, I don't like in this place, can't we move? Please let us move. I feel something's going to happen. And the whole house collapsed into the cellar.
Gosh.
I wouldn't have been a member of St Mildred's Church, would I? I'd have been gone a long while.
So you were in. How long were you in St George's Church?
I can't truthfully answer that one for a long, long while.
Yeah.
But and then whether the bombings sobered down, I just can't remember. My mind's gone blank to that.
And in the document, you talked about a time when the lights went out. You were in a place and there was bombs going off everywhere.
Ah, that was when we weren't in that church. That's right. We were up at the Standard. You know the Standard, do you?
Yes, in Blackheath. Yeah.
Yeah. Coming to the top of Westcombe Hill, there's a row of shops, and this side there's some grass, or there used to be, I presume there is now. And they did an under the ground shelter. We had to go down a load of steps, and they just had wooden forms. You couldn't sleep. If you slept, you went up. That was the way you did it. But a bomb went off by the Roxy Cinema, which was on the old Dover Road, quite a way from where we were, and we thought we got a direct hit. It was most frightening. All the dirt from where we were, right under the ground in the shelter, the dirt all came away with the explosions. We were covered with dirt. It was a horrible experience. And you didn't know whether your entrance had been blocked up. It wasn't, as it happened, but momentary. Am I being buried alive? That's what it feels like. That was a horrible experience. I try not to think too much about it.
And then there was a time when you were with your friend Alex.
Alec?
Was it Alec, your friend?
Alec.
And you were with him when they suddenly there was a terrible bombing campaign, and you were trying to get home. What was that story again?
Oh.
You were at his house.
We'd had a very, very bad bombing in the afternoon. They brought a German plane down quite near where we were sheltering. I was with Alec's mum and dad, and Alec and his dad thought it hilarious watching these dog fights in the sky, but his mum and I were down in the shelter. It was a terrible raid, and I knew my mum, who lived in those days in Blackheath, she was on her own. So when the all clear went, I said, well, if you don't mind, I said, I'm going home. I've got to see if my mother's all right. So he put me on a bus. We got as far, do you know Woolwich at all?
Only very little bit.
Yeah. We got down to the main part where the Arsenal gates are. Couldn't get any further. There were so many fires. Everything was on fire. Hoses were going right across the road. No traffic could pass. So I was stranded in Woolwich, with the knowledge that the Germans would be back in the afternoon. We knew not in the afternoon, in the evening, we knew their antics. So I thought, well, there's only one thing, to get back to Alec. But I suppose it was a good couple of miles away, right up a hill. But I ran part of the way and walked the other, and eventually just rang his bell, or knocked at the door, I can't remember which. And the sirens went, and we had it all night. It was dreadful. And I couldn't get any way, because no phones, hardly anybody had phones in those days. I couldn't get any contact with Mum, and I had to wait till the all clear in the morning. It was a dreadful race, it really was. When you come out of the shelter, all you could see was fires. You were surrounded with fires and bombed buildings. It's, in fact, when you look at Syria on the television, I get remembrance of it, all those houses bombed.
And your mum was okay?
She was okay, yeah. She was a brave woman. It wasn't until she was hit on the head by the ceiling that she would go in a shelter. She was a tough person, really, you know. That.
And tell me what your overall memory of the Blitz was. Then you told me how awful it was. What would you, for people who were not there, what was it like to live in London during the Blitz?
Frightening. And you know, what's his name? His father and mother live in Shrewsbury. I can't think of their name. Lovely family there. And they live in Shrewsbury. Well, my friend Gerald, he was evacuated to Shrewsbury, and I used to go up there and he used to find digs for me and have a weekend up there. Oh, to sleep in sheets was undescribable because, I mean, you couldn't do much washing because you didn't get a chance. They were bombing you so much. And to have lovely clean white sheets and lovely clean blankets and no bombs was wonderful. But I forget who it is. When I remember, I'll tell you. But I told him this story once. I was up in Shrewsbury and the locals said, "Where do you come from?" I said, "London." And they said, "Oh, you must come and see our bomb." I said, "Pardon?" "Well, the Germans dropped a bomb about a mile down the road on the field, and they thought it was terrible. All our houses were coming." I wanted to laugh, but I was polite. I was polite and didn't. But that one bomb, and when I told, I can't think of his name, and they always come up and speak to me whenever they're in church. You know, they live in Shrewsbury, and he still remembers that story, and he laughed like anything when I told him.
But you also experienced, obviously, the trauma of somebody dying. You describe your friend Una. Una. What she was in a
hairdressers.
Yeah.
Having a perm for her 21st birthday, and she had a direct hit. They discovered her body in 3 parts. I've never got over that.
No.
Never got over it. We were great friends. We used to go out and about a lot. I mean, it's so many years ago, but it just hits you. Now and again you get the thought of it, and she was a Christian girl. It's New Cross, I think she was, where the bomb dropped.
So a terrible, terrible experience of fear and carnage, and then of course bereavement. Did you feel that, how were you able to go to church in those days, and did you feel the Lord could you feel His presence with you in all of that experience of the Blitz?
I think I felt, in a way, like I do over my dear Freddie, that I miss terrifically. I miss him, but I remember all the happy times, and when I get really down, and I do, I often sit in here and cry because I haven't got him, but my trust has been in the Lord always, and it still is in the Lord, and I think, well, He knows what He was doing, and He protected me. And when I read Psalm 91, that's the protection psalm, isn't it? And it means a great, well, I think you know it means a great. If I didn't tell you, the church would.
Yeah, I know, we've read, in the King James Version as well.
Yes, in the King James Version.
And that brings me on to, because you actually got that psalm when you were up in Harrogate. So you actually left London to go to Harrogate. What took you up there?
My son was born in January 44, and Freddie got very, very worried. He was still stationed somewhere in England. That's how they used to terminology it. And he'd come home when he could. Very often when he couldn't come home, he'd come home and get put on the charge. I sent away for his army report, and every single thing that they do wrong or right goes on there. My son sent away for it first of all, and he did laugh. He said, "Dad got caught that time, didn't he, Mum?" But if he could get home, he would. Well, in the end, he broke his ankle up in, I forget the name of the place, not that far from York. He broke his ankle, and I'd had my son by then, and he said, "Can you come up for the weekend?" So I just packed a little tiny case with this new baby in my arms, and I went up there. I hadn't got anywhere to live or anything. I went knocking on doors to find digs, and I did find somebody to take me in. Stay for the weekend. Freddie said, "Don't go back, stay for the weekend." And then at the end of the weekend, oh, can't you stay till the end of next weekend? And in the end, they started dropping the flying bombs.
Oh, the V-bombs.
V-bombs, yeah. I didn't know anything about them, only what my mum told me, because she was in London all the time, and my brother. But I didn't go back. I was only going to go up there for a week, but they started in that particular week. So Freddie said, no, I'm not going to let you go back to London. He says, you've got to stay up here. So I stayed up in Harrogate for a whole year.
And it was when Freddie had gone back to serve, you know, you were feeling terribly sad.
Yeah, he went to Italy.
And this is the story of how you were given Psalm 91. So Freddie's just gone to Italy, and you were feeling terribly sad. And then what happened next?
Well, a knock came at the door, and it was a person in uniform, but different uniform to mine. So I said, hello. I said, can I help you? He said, are you Doris? So I said, yes. He said, I've just come over from Canada, where I come from. He said, I'm billeted in England now. He said, and I met a friend of yours from our church, Cyril Shurey, his name was, over in Canada. And he said, if ever you go anywhere near Harrogate, would you please call in and see my friend Doris? And he gave me the address, and he called in. And I was very, very upset. Oh, at first Freddie was there, that was it. And then he came back another time, a few weeks later, and got really red eyes. And if I cry, I do get red eyes. What's the matter? What's the matter? I said, Freddie's been sent abroad. And he said, I'm going to read you a psalm. The psalm my parents gave to me when I left Canada. And it's just so precious, precious. I've got it in all sorts of places. It's hanging on my kitchen and everywhere, at that psalm, because I know the Lord sent that young man, and I've never saw him or heard of him ever since that day. I didn't know his name, his surname or anything, but Cyril had asked him to call, and then he was posted somewhere, and that was it. But it was the Lord sent him, I'm sure of that.
That's wonderful, Doris. I can see my camera is warning me the battery's about to run out, sadly.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to stop this.